Welcome into our 5th game preview video for the 2025 season. The Denver Broncos, currently sitting at 2-2, are set to play in their most anticipated game of the season to date. They're headed to Philadelphia, the Lincoln Financial Field, one of the most hostile environments in football, to take on the undefeated Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. This matchup is going to be a big litmus test for the Broncos. Or at least on paper it is. We'll talk about that in just 1 second. For the Broncos, they're sitting at 2-2 after two really frustrating losses to the Colts and the Chargers. Last week on Monday Night Football at home, they were able to rebound and they got a big win against the Cincinnati Bengals 28-3. But let's not kid ourselves. The Bengals without Joe Burrow are probably contenders for the number 1 overall pick. They're not a good football team. This Eagles team, even though they haven't been playing up to their potential, they've found ways to get the job done. They haven't lost a game this year, and last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jalen Hurts had 0 passing yards in the second half, and the Eagles still found a way to get it done. So this Eagles team, they find ways even if they aren't playing perfect football. And even diehard Eagles fans would tell you that they're not playing their best football right now. Saquon Barkley struggled to get going. Their run defense has been a little bit sus. Their offensive line hasn't played as well as it did last year. So this Eagles team is doing some correcting right now because they want to prove that they're still amongst the cream of the crop in the NFC. Whereas this Broncos team, they're trying to prove that they can go up against a contender of this magnitude and if not come away with a win, at least come away with a hard-fought game. But I think this Broncos team actually has a stronger chance than they're getting credit for to potentially go into Philadelphia and get a dub. So, as we always do these game preview videos, guys, we approach it from the opponent's perspective, break down their strengths and weaknesses, go through their roster, and identify some areas where they could attack the Broncos and where the Broncos could attack them. Before we do that, guys, I do want to go over the X's and O's, who their coordinators are, and what they like to run from a schematic perspective. Their head coach is Nick Sirianni, but he defers everything to his coordinators. Sirianni, even though he was brought in as an offensive mastermind from his days in Indianapolis as their OC, he's deferred everything, has become more that CEO-type head coach. Their offensive coordinator, their 4th offensive coordinator in the last 4 seasons, is Kevin Patullo. He used to be an assistant there in Philadelphia last year. Kellen Moore was previously their offensive coordinator when they won the Super Bowl last season. He's now the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Schematically, they still run the same offense they have for the last several years. It's a shotgun offense predominantly, a lot of RPOs, they spread it out. But they will get under center as well. They've added in that wrinkle since they got Saquon Barkley, and they'll run a lot of power and man rushing concepts. So they do mix it up, and I'd say it's overall a multiple offense. Defensively, their DC is Vic Fangio, former Broncos head coach. We're very familiar with what Vic likes to do here in Denver. He likes to run that 2-high safety shell. He likes to rotate his safeties. Sometimes he'll play cover 1 and cover 3, rotate down into a single high. Sometimes he'll stay in 2-high and play a lot of quarters coverage, quarter, half. Lots of zone for Vic Fangio. We all know what that scheme is. We lived through it for multiple years here in Denver. So now let's go ahead and start talking about this Eagles roster, and let's bring it in courtesy of my favorite website, Ourlads. Jalen Hurts at quarterback. Of course, we've got to start there. And Jalen Hurts gets a lot of controversy in the NFL. Some people will say that he's overrated and he's just a game manager, and others will say that he's underrated and he's one of the top quarterbacks in football. For me, I think it's somewhere in between. Jalen Hurts is a really good quarterback. One of the most underrated in the NFL. Anybody says that Jalen Hurts is just a system quarterback, I disagree with that. I think Jalen Hurts does enough where he makes big plays both with his arm and his leg. He's able to extend plays. He's able to make the entire offense go. And we've seen them plug in other quarterbacks into the system, such as Kenny Pickett, and they weren't able to run it quite at as high of a level. So Jalen Hurts definitely brings something very valuable to this offense. But is he in that elite tier of quarterbacks like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow? No, I don't believe he is. But he's a tier below that, if not maybe 2 tiers below that. Still, an excellent starting quarterback in the NFL, a fringe top 10 guy. Jalen Hurts can definitely make some plays that can kill you. He's a quiet assassin. He's very quiet, but he will come out there and he can kill you on the football field. 70 for 101 passing for 69.3% completion, 609 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, but we like to look beyond the raw numbers as always. In EPA per play, he's 17th out of 36 eligible quarterbacks that have played this season. He's 14th in offensive success rate at 47.02%, and he's got a 6.2% completion percentage over expected, which is 8th out of 36 eligible quarterbacks. 3 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays, that's a PFF stat. An average depth of target of 7.1 yards, which would be the lowest of his career if that number were to hold all season long. So he's not taking as many chances deep downfield. He's somebody who has thrived off of those deep go balls to A.J. Brown, and if you're able to take those away as a defense, it does handicap a lot of what the Eagles like to do in their passing game. His adjusted completion percentage is 9th in the league at 78.5%. He's not running as much as we've seen him previously. 41 attempts for 179 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. I don't know how many of those are tush pushes. 64.6 PFF passing grade, which is tied for 19th, again, out of 36 eligible quarterbacks. So if you're judging it off of PFF passing grade, he's playing like a below-average quarterback, but that stat's very fishy. I still include it, but Bo Nix is graded as one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL when he isn't playing great, or hasn't been playing great as the entire season sample size. Last week I thought he played really good, but I don't think he deserves that low of a grade. So do with it what you will with this PFF passing grade. But some of their other advanced metrics I really like, including their passing pressure metric. When Jalen Hurts is kept clean, he's 48 for 64 for 391 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 2 big-time throws, and 1 turnover-worthy play. When he's under pressure, he's 22 for 37, 218 yards, 1 touchdown, again, no interceptions, 1 big-time throw, and 2 turnover-worthy plays. When he's blitzed, that's when he has the most trouble. When he's blitzed, he's 31 of 52 for 281 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 1 big-time throw, and 3 turnover-worthy plays. When he's not blitzed, 39 for 49, 328 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 2 big-time throws, and no turnover-worthy plays. So the best way to get to Jalen Hurts and have him make mistakes is when you blitz him. Good news for the Broncos. They like to blitz. It's their bread and butter. So I do feel like the Broncos are going to have a good chance to get some pressure on Jalen Hurts and maybe make his life a little bit uncomfortable. But Jalen Hurts is not the only guy you've got to deal with on this Eagles offense, of course. Let's move into the running back position and Saquon Barkley, Hurts' running mate in that backfield. And Saquon's had a tough time getting something going on the ground this year. Some of that is on the offensive line. In fact, I think the majority of it's on the offensive line. But Saquon doesn't quite look the same as he did last season when he had that incredible year, over 2,000 yards rushing, had these big home run hitters. That's what bumped his average up a ton, is he'd have these giant explosive runs for 50-plus yards. He hasn't really had that this year. That's why the volume production for Saquon hasn't been super high. 77 carries for 237 yards, just 3.08 yards per carry. Not great, Bob. 3 rushing touchdowns. Hasn't really gotten involved much in the passing game either. Just 14 catches for 70 yards, no receiving touchdowns. A.J. Dillon is his backup. He's more of a pass protection, third down type back. 9 carries for 46 yards. No receiving stats, and he's got a 68.9 pass block grade. So he's a solid pass protection running back. They'll bring him in certain situations. They've also got Will Shipley there. 3 carries for 26 yards for him and 4 receptions for 35 yards. Shipley's had a very limited role. They then traded for Tank Bigsby from the Jacksonville Jaguars, which was kind of a surprise because you don't think the Philadelphia Eagles really needed depth at running back, but they went out and got Bigsby. He's been relegated to a return role ever since that trade and has not played a single offensive snap. So obviously Saquon Barkley is the guy that you're going to have to deal with for the most part, but they will sprinkle in A.J. Dillon and Will Shipley on occasion, so you're going to have to account for those cats as well. Moving into wide receivers here, and this is going to be the area where the Philadelphia Eagles, at least on paper, the strength is, but this wide receiving core hasn't gotten going at the level that they would like. Both A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, their production has been relatively underwhelming. Brown has 14 receptions for 151 yards and a touchdown, and then Devontae Smith has 17 receptions for 158 yards and 1 touchdown as well. I don't know, man. Neither one of these guys have produced at a high level like we expected coming into the year. Those deep shots to Brown haven't really been there for this Eagles offense, and that's been a bread and butter concept for their team. Devontae Smith, he predominantly operates out of the slot, but he will get out wide as well. He will play as that Z receiver. They've also got Jahan Dotson there, 5 carries for 70 yards and no touchdowns. He's predominantly a wide guy, 80 wide snaps, 51 slot snaps. John Mechie, they got him in a trade from the Houston Texans this offseason. 4 receptions for 18 yards for him. And then they've got Xavier Gipson in that room. He's a return specialist who they got from the Giants. He was originally on the Jets to start this year. He's got big returnability, so we'll see if Xavier Gipson potentially gets in there as a return guy, but not really worried about him on offense. He had a big punt return touchdown a couple of years ago to win a game for the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. But for Philadelphia, they want to get A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith going. They want to get their 2 Batmans, Swole Batman and Skinny Batman. They want to get both of those guys going, and A.J. Brown has been very vocal about his lack of production. He's had some posts on social media, and he's told Devontae Smith, if you want the rock, you should do the same thing. You should be vocal. So it's been a point of emphasis in the Philadelphia media this week to get both of these guys going. Hopefully this isn't the week that it happens. I'm not really worried about Pat Surtain going up against A.J. Brown, but whenever Devontae Smith is in the slot, I do worry about Jaquan McMillan and Jahdae Barron. How are they going to hold up against him? So that's going to be my big point of contention. Riley Moss, he had a big bounce-back game last week against T. Higgins. He's going to get targeted a fair share as well. Those targets are mostly going to come against Jahan Dotson and Devontae Smith, I would imagine. So we'll see how Riley's able to hold up, but I'm kind of more worried about the slot low-key. So that's their wide receivers, and their tight ends. It's been a point of emphasis, I feel like, to play multiple tight end packages for the Eagles this year. Dallas Goedert's dealt with some injuries, but 12 receptions for 114 yards and 3 touchdowns. Predominantly an inline tight end for them. They've also got Grant Calcaterra, who's seen some elevated playing time. He's got just 2 catches for 22 yards, but he's gotten some pretty decent blocking snaps in terms of volume, but hasn't done much with them. He's got a 31.8 PFF run blocking grade and a 51.2 PFF pass blocking grade. Not great, Bob. Cameron Latu, a lot better as a blocker. 65.3 run block, 69.4 pass block. He's been targeted once in the receiving game for no catches. They've also got Kylan Granson there. He's a former Indianapolis Colt. 2 receptions for 6 yards. Kind of a mediocre blocker as well. All 4 of these guys have seen playing time for the Philadelphia Eagles this year, so I would anticipate that to continue. Now, moving into their offensive line, and the Eagles have been thought of as a team having one of the best offensive lines in football, but this season, they haven't really played that way, especially on the interior, with Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, and Tyler Steen. The big issue has really been with Dickerson and Steen. Steen's come in to replace, Mekhi Becton, who is now with the Chargers, and with Dickerson, he's been dealing with some lingering back issues that I wonder deep down if it's affecting his play, because he's played awesome in his first few years in the NFL. This season, he's kind of been a liability for him. 13 total pressures on Dickerson this year, 3 sacks allowed, and 8 quarterback flushes from the pocket. Jordan Mailata, 6 pressures allowed, no sacks and 4 hurries. Cam Jurgens, 4 pressures, no sacks and 4 hurries. Tyler Steen, 9 pressures, 1 sack, and 8 hurries. And then Lane Johnson, he's been in and out of the lineup this year. He's dealt with a couple of injuries. Lane Johnson's going to be fantastic whenever he's in there. He's only allowed 4 pressures on the season. He's really high in both pass block and run block grade, but his replacement, Fred Johnson, whenever he comes into the game, Fred hasn't exactly been great. 3 pressures allowed, 1 sack, and 2 hurries. Has been pretty putrid as a run blocker. In terms of other guys run blocking, you've got Landon Dickerson, who's got a 60.1 run block grade, 24th out of 51 eligible guards. Jurgens, he's 18th in run blocking out of 28 eligible centers, minimum of 50% snaps played. And Tyler Steen, he's 42nd out of 51 eligible guards. So, man, that would probably explain why the Philadelphia Eagles haven't been able to run the football at a high level, because of questionable interior offensive line play. And then whenever Fred Johnson's got in for Lane Johnson, he's been pretty questionable as well. The only forms of consistency that the Eagles have really had on their offensive line, Jurgens has been pretty solid, but he's been sandwiched between really shitty guard play. And Jordan Mailata, he's awesome. He's one of the best left tackles in football. I have no concerns about Jordan Mailata whatsoever. And Mailata and Dickerson, as well as Cam Jurgens, these are the 3 guys that make the tush push go. We talked about the tush push in depth in a previous video, so if you want to hear my in-depth thoughts on the tush push, I will link that in the description below. But yeah, this Eagles offensive line, last season, they were the best in the league. This year, they've been kind of inconsistent. So we'll see what happens. The Broncos might be able to take advantage of some of these matchups up front. I think about John Franklin Myers and Zach Allen against Landon Dickerson and Tyler Steen. Those guys might be licking their chops. I think they're both going to have favorable matchups. Nick Bonito is not going to have a favorable matchup going against Jordan Mailata, but last time Nick Bonito played against an elite left tackle was Joe Alt, and he held his own against Joe Alt and generated multiple pressures, so maybe he's able to do the same thing here against Jordan Mailata. And Lane Johnson, he doesn't have an injury designation for this game, but we're going to have to monitor his health very, very closely. If he comes out of the game, Fred Johnson's going to come in, and that might cause some more problems for the Eagles' offensive line. They've got probably the best offensive line coach in football right now in Jeff Stoutland, so I trust Stout to get these issues figured out. But it is something to monitor here going into this game for the Denver Broncos, because they might have some favorable matchups up front. So now let's go ahead and talk about Vic Fangio's defense. And even though Vic Fangio is known as predominantly a two-high coordinator, his 2 most commonly called coverages this year are actually single-high coverages. He calls cover 1 30% of the time. That's his most common call. And then he calls cover 3 30% of the time. That's his most common call. And then his second most common call is cover 1 at 25% of the time. He'll still call his cover 4. He calls that 19% of the time. He'll still call his quarter, half, which is a hybrid of cover 2 and cover 4. He calls that 13% of the time. He'll call some cover 2. He does that 5% of the time. He does zero blitz when he has to. He didn't really do a lot of that in Denver, but here in Philadelphia, when he absolutely needs to get pressure, he will zero blitz. He does that 2% of the time, and then he calls cover 2 man just 1% of the time. Let's go over some more advanced stats here for this Eagles defense, and then we'll talk about personnel. They're 6th in EPA per play allowed. They're 16th in success rate allowed at 42.91%. 6th in EPA per passing play allowed, and 16th in EPA per rushing play allowed. So Vic Fangio's secondary, it's had some question marks, especially with one player being Adoree Jackson, but he's been able to get really good production out of that secondary, considering some of the question marks that they have. But their run defense has been a little bit suspect as well this year, so they're having some issues in the run game on both sides of the ball. They've just been an average run defense this year. They've got 860 passing yards allowed, which is 12th, 56.93 completion percentage allowed, best in the NFL. So this is probably going to be a run-first game for the Broncos. 5 passing touchdowns allowed, 504 rushing yards allowed, which is 20th, and 3 rushing touchdowns allowed. We saw the Broncos have their first 100-yard rusher in the Sean Payton era last week with J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins is going to have another big day, possibly another 100-yard day if he's going to want to have, or if the Denver Broncos are going to want to have a good day here against Philadelphia. So now let's go ahead and talk about this Eagles defense here. They run a base 3-4, of course, under Vic Fangio. Moro Ojomo has been a phenomenal player for them this year. He leads the team in sacks with 2 and total pressures with 15. Ojomo has been a really nice find for them, a former 7th-round pick. He's emerged as a top-tier interior defensive lineman as a pass rusher. They've got Jordan Davis as their nose tackle. Davis has had some issues this year, but he does lead the team in run stops with 7. Jalen Carter, he of course missed that first game for the Eagles against the Dallas Cowboys after that pregame incident with Dak Prescott. He's come back and he's been his productive self in pressure, their second highest pressure creator with 11 total pressures. As far as their edge rushers are concerned, they've got Zadarius Smith and Jalix Hunt as their 2 starters, along with Joshua Uche, Patrick Johnson, and Azeez Ojulari. Those guys are listed predominantly as the backups. Jalix Hunt has 11 pressures. Josh Uche has 10 pressures. They've also got Nolan Smith. He plays kind of a hybrid off-ball linebacker edge rush role. And Nolan Smith on the season... I just had it. He's got 8 total pressures on the year, but he went on injured reserve. That's going to be some production that the Eagles are going to have to fill. They've got Zach Bond and Jahad Campbell as their 2 starting off-ball linebackers. Both of those guys have been phenomenal in coverage this year. Campbell has an 86.2 coverage grade. Zach Bond has a 78.8 coverage grade. Then at corner, your 2 boundary corners are Quinyon Mitchell and Adoree Jackson. Then you've got Cooper DeJean at nickel. DeJean will slide outside in certain situations as well. DeJean has been your best coverage guy in terms of PFF grade, in terms of DBs, 83.5. Quinyon Mitchell has a 71.8. You've got Keely Ringo, who has kind of alternated with Adoree Jackson here. He's been better than Jackson. He's got a 64.8 coverage grade. Your 2 safeties, Andrew Makuba and Reed Blankenship. Makuba has a 45.5 coverage grade, and Blankenship has a 42.4 coverage grade. So those are some matchups you can attack as well. If Vic Fangio's in quarters coverage, one of these safeties is going to be one-on-one with no help over the top. That means you could burn them on a deep post or some sort of deep passing concept there. These two safeties, keep an eye on them. They've got a pair of veterans as rotational guys in Sidney Brown and Marcus Epps. So we'll see if Brown or Epps get into the game. But with Makuba and Blankenship, that's another potential favorable matchup there for the Denver Broncos. And Adoree Jackson, he has been terrible this year. 41.3 coverage grade. He's somebody who Eagles fans consistently complain about. Jackson is a big mismatch in the secondary here that the Broncos could take advantage of. So watch out. Either Ringo or Jackson, whichever one's in there, look for the Broncos to attack them and look for the Broncos to also attack Andrew Makuba and Reed Blankenship. Even though the Eagles' secondary has had some good production on paper, there are some mismatches here that the Denver Broncos can look to attack. And there are also some mismatches up front where I think the Denver Broncos might be able to run the football and have a really strong day on the ground. Finally, let's go ahead and just briefly touch on special teams. Their kicker is Jake Elliott. Elliott had some issues with consistency from beyond 50 yards last year. All of that seems to have been cleaned up. He's back to his normal self. Jake the Make. Braden Mann is their punter, one of the most solid punters in the league. And then long snapper, Cal Adamitis, former Cincinnati Bengal. Who cares about the long snappers? So let's go ahead and now talk about some keys to victory here for this Denver Broncos team. And we're going to start off, as we always do, with stay healthy, can't afford any big injuries, and no stupid penalties. Knock on wood for both of those things. You've got to stay disciplined for all 4 quarters. No false starts, no jumping off sides, nothing after the whistle. Again, you can't shoot yourself in the foot if you want to win against this Eagles team. Clog rushing gaps up front. Give Saquon Barkley nowhere to run, and don't let him bounce any runs to the outside. So Saquon's had kind of some issues getting going because of his offensive line this year. Keep it that way in this game. Don't let this be Saquon Barkley's breakout game for the 2025 season. Stay aware of Jalen Hurts as a rushing threat on zone reads, stuff like that. Keep contained. Don't let Jalen Hurts get out of the pocket, or he could have some explosive runs with his legs. He hasn't really done it much this year, but I think about the wild card game against the Los Angeles Rams where Hurts ran free for a big, long touchdown. So that's something I would keep an eye on in this one for sure. The pressure must come from the middle. You're going to want to take advantage of Landon Dickerson and Tyler Steen. Those are your favorable matchups on the Eagles' offensive line for the Broncos' D-line. So Zach Allen, JFM, I immediately think about those guys as ones who should get pressure in this game. Stay aware of boundary shots to A.J. Brown whenever you're in single high coverage. Denver is still a single high team at its core. Cover 1, cover 3. They do drop back and play a little bit more zone, especially over these last couple of weeks, but when they get in single high, those are the opportunities that A.J. Brown might have and Jalen Hurts might have on the boundaries. So keep an eye out for those. Have a plan to minimize Alex Singleton in coverage. Singleton, the former Eagle, is going to be returning to Philadelphia in this one, and the Eagles know what his weaknesses are, and they know how to attack him because he was there. So he's a guy that you want to mitigate having him in vulnerable situations, and have a plan to minimize having him in coverage. Feed J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey early and often. Keep the defense honest and have them play tight to the line of scrimmage. Force them to sell out to stop the run. That's when you can have these one-on-one matchup opportunities down the boundary where Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims. I really like whoever's going to be going up against Adoree Jackson in this one. So that's the matchup that I want to keep an eye on here. If the Eagles defense gives you these opportunities, take advantage of them. Bo must be patient, though. He can't force anything into the voids in the zones or into the zone coverage because Fangio's defense will squeeze on it. They'll make him pay if he forces anything that isn't there. So Bo Nix needs to do a good job of taking what the defense gives him. Don't let the Eagles be in short yardage situations to run the tush push. We talked about how if it's 3rd down and 5, it's really 3rd down and 4. You need to basically not let them get that yard. If they're within a yard of the to-go situation, they're just going to run the tush-push and they're going to pick it up. Same thing if you're down near the goal line. You can't let them get in 1st and goal, 2nd and goal from the 1 or 1.5 yard line because they're just going to run the tush-push, and odds are you're probably not going to stop the tush-push whenever they run it. So just don't let them run it. Dare I say it, I think the Denver Broncos match up well against this Eagles team. Philly's not playing great in the trenches on either side of the ball. And as I always say, this game is won and lost in the trenches. Denver's going to have to be disciplined. They're going to have to play their best football. They can't shoot themselves in the foot. But this would be a damn good time for them to put together their most complete game against a legit contender. Do I think they'll do it? Yes, I actually do. I'm picking the Broncos to win this game. I didn't think I was going to heading into this, but once I started studying the Eagles, looking at some film, looking at some numbers, looking at their weaknesses, I think the Broncos can attack them in enough areas where they could maybe come away with a win. I've got Denver winning 20-17, and I think it's going to happen on a walk-off field goal from Will Lutz. The Broncos are going to be the final team to possess the ball. Bo Nix is going to lead them down in the field goal range, and Will Lutz is going to split the uprights, and the Broncos are going to come away with the biggest upset victory of the week and their biggest victory so far in the 2025 season. Is that crazy? I don't know. It might not be, because the Philadelphia Eagles do have some weaknesses that I think the Broncos can exploit. All right, guys, how do you guys think this game's going to go? Do you think the Broncos stand a chance? Do you think they're going to have a chance to exploit some of these weaknesses? Or do you think that Philly is just too good and they're ultimately going to find a way to win? Drop those thoughts in the comment section below, Broncos Country. I would love to hear from you as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video as well, subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are both free and easy ways to show your support. Helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out, and it helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos Country just like you and me. Additionally, if you guys want to go above and beyond in supporting the channel, please consider becoming a channel member today. I would really appreciate it. It's not mandatory whatsoever, but if you want some extra perks and incentives in exchange for helping me out and helping the channel grow, the link is in the description below. And until next time, guys, I'm your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.